putting the faith element aside, from an archaeological perspective, there is likely no people that exist on the planet today that has more connection with a piece of real estate, more so than that the Jewish people have with the land of Israel and with Jerusalem in particular.
Well, welcome to the Keeping It Israel podcast. Again, my name is Jeff, your host, and we are in the middle of a series called Battle for Truth. And today I'm excited. We have a returning guest, Ze'ev Orenstein, Director of International Affairs from the City of David Foundation. Ze'ev is the Director of International Affairs, and to that end, he is responsible for strengthening awareness of and support for the archaeological site among those shaping public policy and opinion. As such, he has delivered briefings in the White House, the State Department, and on Capitol Hill, as well as led in-person tours of the City of David for countless diplomats, dignitaries, faith leaders, journalists, and members of Congress. Ze'ev was born in the United States and grew up in New Jersey, moved to Israel in 2003, and today lives with his family in Ma'ale Adumim. I don't know if I said that right. Just outside Jerusalem. Ze'ev, welcome back to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
Well, Ze'ev, we're doing this series called Battle for Truth, and what we want to really hone in on is the truth that dispels many of the lies that are happening out there in the media and in the world today. But for those in our audience who don't know where the City of David is, how would you explain its location and significance?
You know, if you would ask the average Christian or Jewish person to close their eyes and imagine biblical Jerusalem and say, what do you see? You would hear things like the Western Wall, the old city of Jerusalem, maybe the Church of Holy Sepulchre, the Via Dolorosa, all good places, except none of them are actually in the original Hebrew Bible. When we speak of the Jerusalem of people like King David, King Solomon, prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, they are not walking through the old city of Jerusalem, but actually the City of David, the historic site of biblical Jerusalem, the place where Jerusalem began. Now, where is the City of David? The City of David is directly south of the Temple Mount, adjacent to the Western Wall. We're talking about, probably about a 3-minute walk from the Western Wall, just south of the Temple Mount, outside the walls of the old city. And yet up until 150 years ago, when people think, where's the original biblical city of Jerusalem? They're all looking for it in the wrong place, only to be rediscovered in 1867 by Captain Charles Warren of England. And so today, the City of David is one of the most archaeologically excavated sites in the world, the most excavated site in Israel. And there is likely nowhere else on the planet, more so than the City of David, that allows you to take the Bible in one hand, the archaeology that is being unearthed in the other, and show that Jerusalem's biblical heritage, the connection that both Jews and Christians share with Jerusalem, is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact.
I love that. And I love coming to the City of David. We're excited to be there again in a month or so. But tell us what led you to be in this position at the City of David, and what does it mean to you personally?
If I have to give a one-word answer, it's providence. I'm very blessed that I wake up in the morning and I get to do something that I would actually pay to do, and yet I get paid to do it. It's a huge privilege. I'd like to think it's an even bigger responsibility, getting to represent Jerusalem, the City of David, to some of the most significant leaders and people shaping policy and public opinion around the world. And I went to university. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I majored in psychology only because it was the shortest major that they had. But all I knew is I really loved Israel. But at that time, 20-something years ago, when I was majoring in university, there wasn't like a Israel major or a career in Israel stuff. And all I knew was that what I wanted to do was connect people to Israel. And, I prayed. I prayed to God over it, that he should allow me to find a way to support my family honorably, doing that very thing. I told him I don't need a big house or a huge salary or fancy cars or exotic vacations. I just don't want to be an accountant. And no disrespect to accountants, but I want to dedicate myself to connecting people to Israel. And we have a teaching in our faith that says on the path that one wants to go, God places it before him. And I'm very blessed that here I am, 10 years now at the city of David, getting to do this amazing work in this position. And every day is a blessing, every day is an opportunity, every day is a privilege, and every day is a responsibility to hopefully live up to the anointing that I've been given for this season.
Yeah, that's great. And believe it or not, we have that same teaching in our faith, that God directs our steps. And those are the things that are just so important when we're living out our life. Now, you talk about representing the city of David sort of to the world. And this is where we want to sort of get into this conversation today. One of the false narratives going on out there right now is that Jewish people are not indigenous to the land of Israel, that they are colonialists who have stolen land from the Palestinian people. So, in your opinion, who would you classify as indigenous to the land of Israel, and why?
Well, there are a few ways to answer the question. I think the first one, since this is a podcast for people of faith, indigeneity is important to talk about. Who was there first or who's been there the longest. But the bedrock of the claim of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is not in a contest of, well, we were here 4,000 years and you were only here this many years or that many years. First and foremost, it's important to say it is God's covenant with Israel, with the Jewish people, that he promised us his land. And from a Jewish perspective, one of the things that we learn out from the very first verse in the entire Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Bible commentators, one in particular, his name is Rashi. It's an acronym, but he asks a question. He says, if the Bible is essentially a book of commandments, so why doesn't God start already in Exodus once we really get into the flow of all the commandments? Why do we need the whole story of Genesis and the creation story and the patriarchs and the matriarchs and the tribes? Like, it's nice, it's good stories, but there are no commandments there. So what do we really need them for? And what this commentator said 1,000 years ago, he said, the day is going to come when the nations of the world are going to say to you, to Israel, you are thieves. You stole this land from us. You need to leave. Now, 1,000 years ago, when the Jewish people are scattered throughout the world and very few are living in the land of Israel, this commentary sounded ridiculous. And yet today, even a small child would understand the teaching here, and you don't even need this person to teach it, because we see it every single day that the people of the world are questioning our right to this land. So first and foremost, why do we have it? Because as this commentator said, God created the world, and he gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people. And that by itself, certainly for people of faith, should be enough. But to answer now your question more specifically, when you dig in the land of Israel in general, in Jerusalem in particular, you find antiquities dating back thousands and thousands of years. And what you find are many of those antiquities, you find ancient inscriptions affirming biblical events. You find seals with the names of biblical figures like the biblical King Hezekiah, like the prophet Isaiah, inscriptions affirming events such as Hezekiah's engineering a 533-meter long tunnel to save Jerusalem from the Assyrian invasion 2,700 years ago. We find coins with Hebrew writing going back thousands of years, such as on the silver half-shekel coin that would have been brought to the temple as part of the temple tax. We are now unearthing discoveries like the Pool of Siloam, like the pilgrimage road that would have taken pilgrims up to the temple thousands of years ago, which we can go more into depth about all those discoveries. But the amazing thing is we are finding literally the stones are crying out that we have been here for thousands of years. And the amazing thing is, and I shared this idea before, which is, if you take a seal, like the seal of King Hezekiah that was found only a few years ago. Now, I ask many people, what do you think these seals that we're discovering are made out of? And instinctively, people say wax. And I said, well, it's a good thing they weren't made out of wax, because had they been made out of wax, when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem 2,500 years ago and burned it down to the ground, these seals would have melted. They're made out of clay. Clay hardens in fire. But had the seals been found, say, 2,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, even 500 years ago, we almost certainly would not know about it today. It's as if these discoveries are laying in wait for a time such as this. Why? Because up until about 100 years ago, much of the world, certainly the Western world, you could say were believers. They believed in God. They believed in the truth of the Bible, of Scripture. And yet over the last century, certainly in Europe, certainly in the United States now, we're seeing more and more of a drift away from that, where there is virtually no university campus anywhere in the Western world without a robust biblical criticism, if not class, a whole department. And certainly in the culture, in the media, academia, the Bible and those who take the Bible seriously are mocked and scorned. And yet, at the same time, we're living at a time of unprecedented archaeological discovery of antiquities, fancy word for old stuff, that are showing that Jerusalem's biblical heritage, the connection that Jews and Christians share with that heritage, is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. It's real. You could see it, you could touch it, you could walk on it. And so here you have a choice. You have those who are denying, and at the same time, you have unprecedented discovery showing the truth of Jerusalem's biblical heritage. And now everyone can make, freely an informed decision. As it says in Deuteronomy, that God has placed before us life and death. Choose life, right? And so here it is. The choice is for everyone to make. But the idea of saying that the Jewish people in some way are not native to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, putting the faith element aside, from an archaeological perspective, there is likely no people that exist on the planet today that has more connection with a piece of real estate, more so than that the Jewish people have with the land of Israel and with Jerusalem in particular.
Yeah. Wow. You said a lot. Excuse me. You said a lot in that little paragraph. And I can tell, it's clear to me that this theme of the promised land is so important when it comes to the Jewish faith. It's important when it comes to our faith as well.
Sure.
You mentioned the covenants that God made with the people of Israel, but also, and I love this, you go back to creation and go like, this is the God of Israel who says that he created the whole earth. And so the connection is one that goes back to the very beginning. And you
Right.
have really articulated that well. So how connected then do you feel with ancient Jews who once lived in the land of Israel? And why do you feel connected?
Well, here's a story that I think you could appreciate. I was sitting with a Christian friend of mine, and we were talking about whatever. And at some point I said to him, I said, if Jesus were to magically appear in this room right now, I said, he and I could have a conversation in Hebrew. We could talk about what our Sabbath plans are, about the upcoming biblical festivals, whether it was Passover or Pentecost or Tabernacles. The conversation would be in Hebrew. We'd be talking about life in Israel. And it would be a conversation of two Jews between each other. And if we want to go back, if Jesus is 2,000 years ago and you want to go back 3,000 years ago to David, I could have the same conversation with King David, also in Hebrew, talking about what it would be like living back then, today. It's the same Jewish faith. It's the same Jewish people, same language, same God that we worship, same festivals, same traditions. And therefore, there really is not a difference between the Jewish people today and the Jewish people from thousands of years ago. Again, we worship the same God. We speak the same language, have the same customs, traditions, festivals as our ancestors did thousands of years ago, literally living and walking in the very same places where they lived and they walked thousands of years ago. It's the same people, it's the same faith, it's the same land. And again, I don't think there's anywhere else where you have that trifecta, or for the purpose of your podcast, a trinity of those three things coming together in one place, and therefore it's one people. The fact that we're ancient people that goes back thousands of years to this very day, but it's the same people, same land, same faith, same language, same everything. And that's a very, very powerful thing. It's a very special thing. And again, that also is very connected to your faith, because Jesus was Jewish. Whatever he did in his lifetime, he did it as a Jew. And therefore, I think that there is no real way to separate whether you're Jewish or Christian and the connection that you feel to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, without you're not able to disconnect that from the Bible and from the Jewish connection and the Jewish right to those places. Because if the Jewish people don't have a heritage and don't have a history in the land of Israel and in Jerusalem, then neither do Christians.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And listen, I want to say to people listening and watching, if you're Christian and you're one of those Christians who have said, Israel doesn't matter, I have no connection to that, my faith is all about Jesus and what happened going forward, that's something that Ze'ev just said right now that you need to hear, because there is no there is no Christian faith without a connection to Israel and to the Jewish people. And I think that's just wonderful that you point that out. Zev, you talk about the language and the rebirth of the Hebrew language, the modern Hebrew, really was a miracle, I believe, back in kind of the late 1800s. Just talk about how
Sure.
significant that is a little bit.
Well, you have Native American tribes today. You have the Irish trying to bring back Gaelic. You have different ancient peoples or not so ancient peoples trying to bring back old languages with very little success. It's not easy to bring a dead language back to life.
Mm.
And so for many centuries, if not well over a millennia, Hebrew became not so much a dead language, but a language of, let's say, prayer and Bible study. But that was it. And the amazing thing that's happened with the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is you see so much of the land and the people coming back to life. And so what does that mean? For much of the last 2,000 years, the land of Israel was barren, was desolate. You could look at the writings of Mark Twain, who talks about his experience when he visited the land. And yet when the Jewish people returned to the land, as it said in the Bible, the prophecies came true of with the ingathering of the exiles, of the flourishing, making the desert bloom. And you see part of that also is the Hebrew language coming back to life. That today you can, talk about, what happened in the Super Bowl in Hebrew. You could talk about the latest movies in Hebrew. You could talk about politics in Hebrew. Yes, of course, you keep talking about the faith in Hebrew and prayers in Hebrew. But the fact that you could talk about everyday life in this ancient language is an amazing thing. And it's part of the restoration, part of the rejuvenation of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland. It's even the language comes back to life here.
Yeah. And I'm imagining sort of when all of this was happening. This was a huge commitment for a Jewish person who didn't speak Hebrew to learn this language. I know because it's incredibly difficult for me to learn anything about it. This was a huge thing. And the fact that millions now are able to speak in modern Hebrew is just miraculous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the city, Jerusalem. How significant and important is the city of Jerusalem specifically for the Jewish people?
Well, for the Jewish people, it's clear that when we pray 3 times a day, no matter where we are in the world, we turn to face Jerusalem. And if we're in Jerusalem, we turn to face the Temple Mount, Mount Moriah. When we get married, wherever we are in the world, we break a glass that reminds us, like it says in the Psalms, that if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right arm wither, let my tongue cleave to my palate, if I don't place Jerusalem above my greatest joy. And so at the moment of our greatest joy, when we get married, we remember Jerusalem. In Jewish faith, when a person dies, they also, we remember Jerusalem. One of the things we say in a house of mourning is, may you be comforted amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. So your personal mourning is connected to the yearning and aspirations of the Jewish people for the ultimate rebuilding of Jerusalem, of the return to Jerusalem. In our prayers, Jerusalem is constantly mentioned. One of the blessings that we've been saying for 2,000 years is next year in Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem is at the very center. It is the heart of the Jewish people. For so much of the Bible, so many of the commandments are actually ones that could really only be kept in Jerusalem. The commandments related to things like the temple and the temple service and the worship can only be fulfilled in Jerusalem. And so it's hard to live a full, complete Jewish identity and a Jewish life and really to understand the Bible, even if you're not Jewish. But if you want to understand God's word and what was and what the Bible talks about, what will be in the future, all of that is deeply intertwined with Jerusalem, a physical Jerusalem and a spiritual Jerusalem. And when you think of Jerusalem, there really is no place in the world more so than Jerusalem that not for millions, but for billions of people, they wake up in the morning and they look to it as a source of meaning, faith, identity, inspiration, purpose, more so than New York or Washington, D.C., or Rome or London or Paris or Moscow or anywhere else in the world. Jerusalem is number one. And that's a very, very big deal that this place, in the case of Jerusalem, even the city of David specifically, there's a half-mile stretch running through the city of David up through to the Temple Mount in the north that is easily the most significant half mile on the planet. There is no half mile that means more to more people than the half mile running through the city of David up to the footsteps of the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. And to know that we're in a place right now that we're essentially stewards for billions of people who want to connect with Jerusalem, with her heritage, with her identity, with the faith that comes from a place like Jerusalem, the vision of the prophets for what will be here in the future in Jerusalem. That's a big responsibility, and it's also an incredible privilege to be able to live in a place like this and to be able to share it with people all over the world.
Yeah. Well said. And in light of all of this, what would you say to someone who believes Zionism to be a modern colonialist invention?
Well, the amazing thing about history and about Jerusalem in particular is if a person goes to visit the pyramids or the Colosseum, you see two of the great wonders of the world, and you go to the pyramids, you say, "Wow, look at the grandeur of the pharaohs." And you go to the Colosseum and you say, "Look at the might of the great Roman Empire." But then you say, "Where are the pharaohs today? Where is the great Roman Empire today?" And the answer is the same: museums, history books, with some monuments left behind. A person comes to Jerusalem. They walk through the city of David, walk through the Pool of Siloam, walk up the pilgrimage road, leading the half-mile journey that millions of pilgrims some 2,000 years ago in the time of Jesus, the same road they would have walked on when they went on pilgrimage up to the temple. And you see it's the same road. It's the same pool from 2,000 years ago, that when we finish the excavation of the pool, of the pilgrimage road, I believe it will also be among the great wonders of the world, but in a category all its own. Because if the pyramids, if the Colosseum represent a chapter of history, once upon a time, this represents something different. This represents the continuation of a story, the story of our shared heritage in Jerusalem that is being brought back to life after 2,000 years. That the people who were at the pool of Siloam 2,000 years ago, the people who walked up through the city of David along the pilgrimage road to the temple, atop the Temple Mount 2,000 years ago, it is their very same descendants who are going to walk on those very stones in the near future. And therefore, Zionism today is not modern because it is an ancient idea, ancient aspiration of the Jewish people to return to Zion, to the land of Israel, to Jerusalem, except it's taken on the modern day clothing of a political movement, you can call it nationalism, you can call it whatever you want, call it Zionism, but the aspiration has been there for thousands of years. It's just that in modern times we've been able to find the means to bring that ancient hope, that ancient dream, that ancient wish, and that ancient prayer to fruition. And that is something that is very much ongoing as we speak, because there's still much work to be done here in the land of Israel in terms of developing the land. Obviously, we're not fully secure in our borders yet. The vision of the prophets for the lamb lying down with the wolf or the lion has not yet come to be. So there's plenty of work to be done. But what we're doing today in the modern political sense of the state of Israel is rooted in thousands of years of our history and of our faith and our identity.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit more about the archaeology. What are some of the most outstanding archaeological finds that prove a Jewish presence in the land of Israel in ancient times? What's the earliest one, as a matter of fact, that you're aware of?
Well, see, I mean, you have when you dig in the city of David, you go back easily, to the time of the patriarchs. We're finding remnants going back to the Canaanites that were controlling the city. That when David conquers the city 3,000 years ago, he conquers it from the Jebusites, and we find the ancient walls that surrounded the city. That the Jebusites in 2 Samuel chapter 5, where they are so confident, where they yell down to David and they say, "We could put our blind and our lame up on the walls of the city. You will not be able to conquer it." Well, they weren't wrong. Because when a person looks at the massive walls and massive fortifications that surround the city of David, you can understand why they were so confident. You find the fortress that sat atop the Gihon spring that protected the life-giving waters of Jerusalem that was built, nearly 4,000 years ago. We still have that fortress. And then, as you get, to the time of David, there's some archaeologists who believe they've discovered King David's palace. We then find remnants, from Hezekiah and onwards. You could almost take the entire story of the Assyrian conquest of Jerusalem, or attempted conquest of Jerusalem, with Sennacherib and Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, and you could take every main character in that story, every main event in that story, and you could take the archaeological discovery, you could take the figure, you could take the event, and match it all up word for word. We have seals of the prophet Isaiah, of King Hezekiah, the two of the four ministers of King Zedekiah, who plotted to kill the prophet Jeremiah. We have ancient etchings of a menorah. We find the coins that were used as a temple tax. It's really, the sky is the limit in terms of what we will still find in the future. As I mentioned a few moments ago, we're excavating the pool of Siloam, which served as the largest ritual bath in Jerusalem going back thousands of years, where the historian Josephus says you would have had up to nearly 3 million people going on pilgrimage up to the temple on the pilgrimage festivals 2,000 years ago. So we have the largest ritual bath. We have the biblical superhighway, the pilgrimage road being excavated that would have taken those pilgrims all the way up to the temple, with the shops and the stalls lining the sides of the pilgrimage road. And so it's really an amazing thing that, during COVID, I put out a video series just as a way to keep in touch with people. And I took in each video, which is about 2 minutes long, a discovery that's been made that's connected to either the city of David specifically or Jerusalem in general, and showed how it matched up with the Bible. And I stopped when thankfully COVID ended, but I had already gotten to over 30 discoveries just connected to the city of David or Jerusalem, that you could take the discovery, you could take what it says in the Bible, and you just see word for word the connection. Jerusalem's biblical heritage coming to life, not simply as a matter of faith, but as a matter of fact, that you see every single day, that when you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life.
This is awesome. Let's talk just a little bit about the Temple Mount before we wrap up here. But what archaeological evidence do we have that the Jewish temple stood on the Temple Mount in ancient times? And do the stories in the Bible match the archaeology around the Temple Mount?
So there's almost like a double-edged sword when it comes to this question, because the Temple Mount, officially, no archaeological activity has been carried out on the Temple Mount. And the reason for that is today you have 2 Islamic shrines there. In modern times, the site has been controlled, even though it's officially under Israeli sovereignty. The site is controlled by the Muslim Waqf for Religious Trust. And let's just say they are not keen in general on non-Muslims being up on the Temple Mount to visit, and certainly not to carry out archaeological excavations. Now, in the late 1990s, the very same Islamic authority carried out illegal renovations on the Temple Mount using, for archaeology, the tools that you use in archaeology are small brushes, very, very small hammers. You're not looking to break anything. You're looking just to unearth things and to uncover things. And if there's any site that can be considered perhaps the most sensitive archaeological site on the planet, it would be the Temple Mount. And yet in the late 1990s, the Islamic Trust, they took bulldozers, dump trucks, heavy machinery onto the Temple Mount in order to renovate and essentially create the largest underground mosque in Israel, which is beneath the surface of the Temple Mount. It's called the Marwani Mosque. And they removed dozens and dozens of truckloads. You're talking about thousands of tons of earth from the Temple Mount, from Mount Moriah, were dumped in a garbage dump. Israeli archaeologists found out about it, and they were able to then salvage much of that earth. And today people are still sifting through it and finding ancient coins, ancient seals, ancient inscriptions that all date back to the temple. In fact, they even found the mosaic floor tiles that would have adorned Herod's temple and the courtyards of the temple going back 2,000 years ago. Now, the very sad thing about it from an archaeological perspective is those same floor tiles are being found next to a Coke can or a potato chip bag, which means they're totally out of historic context. Because normally in an archaeological excavation, if you're digging in a layer going back 2,000 years ago, you're not going to find a Coke can because there was no Coke 2,000 years ago. Right. So the fact that today, because of this crime carried out by the Islamic Authority on the Temple Mount, you're finding ancient history and ancient heritage of the history of the Temple Mount, alongside modern day garbage.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. We've actually taken our groups to the sifting project and been a part of going through some of that debris. And actually, the last time we were there, one of our people found a coin that got everybody there very excited, and we sort of followed the story afterwards. It was a really cool experience. I think it's as you said, tragic that this happened in the 1990s, a crime. But also kind of backfired in some ways, because as you go through the debris, you're finding more and more evidence of the temple actually having been there. And
that's right.
Yeah. Listen, Ze'ev, it's been great to talk to you. Really, I appreciate you taking the time today. And I want our people to know who are watching, listening, how they can find out more about the City of David. Where can they find these videos that you talked about? Just share a little bit of that information with us.
So if you go on YouTube and type in City of David, Ancient Jerusalem, you'll find our channel. You could find all our various videos there. The specific series I was talking about is called City of David, Bringing the Bible to Life. But all of our content, is great. If you go to Facebook, type in City of David, Ancient Jerusalem. Instagram, I think, is at City of David. And you can find all our content in those various places. We have our website, cityofdavid.org.il. You can do /EN for English. And anything you want to know about the City of David, you should find in one of those outlets.
Amazing. And a little sort of side plug, but I think on the City of David website, you'll even find maybe a clip that I'm in with Anna-Rena Heyman from a number of years ago, who we interviewed, and they took some of that footage and used it. So, I'm not famous yet, but I'm on the City of David website, so that's kind of cool.
That's something.
Yeah. Anna-Rena used to talk about the verse in Psalms. I can't remember the text, but about Jerusalem shaking off its dust. And
That's right.
I have that amazing sort of image in my mind when I go to the City of David and see all the amazing discoveries. Ze'ev, it's been
in the Psalms. It talks about that that we're meant to cherish the dusts and the stones of Jerusalem, and therefore, in Jerusalem, even the dust is holy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Ze'ev, it's been great to have you. Thank you again for taking the time, and shalom from Canada.
Yeah, God bless.
First Century Foundations is excited to tell you that we have some great Israel Christian-related content coming up on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe by clicking the button below so you can stay informed. If you're already subscribed, thank you.